Rob, we are back with Ruminate. It's a podcast that we've done for a really long time. How are you?
Yeah, we have been doing it for a long time. Yeah, no, I'm really good. We're back. I'm actually feeling better. The last couple of episodes, people might have noticed I maybe sounded a bit off. I still sound a bit off, but I am really getting there now.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I hope everybody in your family returns to good health, because I know that everybody has kind of had their moment of passing bugs around.
Oh yeah,
this is what it's like having a young child. You know all the. It's wonderful having a child. It just means you get sick more often.
Oh yeah, it's great.
There's some other benefits too, but yeah, that's one of the side effects of having a little kid around.
Yeah, she's pretty cute though. That's all right. I'll let her off.
Yeah, she is. She is very cute. I want to know if you survived not only the sickness that has been passed around your house, but if you survived the Carolina Reaper chips, crisps that you told me about. I guess they're cheese curls technically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is we spoke about the jalapeno and cheese ones last episode.
Right.
And not probably 2 days after my cafe guy, Kai, I'll say hi because he listens now. He'd managed to get these Carolina Reaper ones, and I'd sort of seen them, and I thought, that Carolina Reaper, that's a pretty hot chili. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. But he opened up a bag there and then that he was giving to somebody else and let me try one.
Uh-huh.
And they're really good. So I immediately bought a bag. All right. I think a little bit like the jalapeno ones, however they're using the ingredients, they're clearly using decent quality ingredients, because although they are spicy, they taste really good.
Okay.
Which I don't think is always the case when you get these really spicy peppers.
No, it's not always the case. And the Carolina Reaper pepper is very much a very hot pepper. I have a feeling that your cafe guy is now buying things for his shop based on the fact that you are trying them. He knows that he's got at least one customer.
Well, this particular brand also do I believe it's blue cheese and buffalo wings flavor.
That I'd like to try, actually.
He hasn't managed to get those yet. I'm hoping at some point we'll be able to get those, and I, of course, will report back to Ruminate, which is, the premier snacks podcast.
Speaking of Premier Snacks podcast, I should send you a picture. I walked into, so last weekend I was taking it easy on Saturday, and I had found this used video game shop not too far from where we live. And I had been there once last summer with one of my kids, and I wanted to just go in and see, I don't know what they had, because I don't know, I've got the itch again to buy some physical cartridges. And it had been a while, it had been months since I've been there. They still had they have hundreds and hundreds of games. They have everything, Rob. I mean, it's an amazing place. It has it's very heavy on Nintendo, but it's got all the Xbox and Sony, I mean, Vita games, PSP games, you name it, they've got it there. And there was an entire long section that used to be video games, though, that I saw, and now it's full of snacks. And these aren't just any snacks. These are the really strange Japanese snacks with all the strange flavors of Kit Kats. I don't know if you've ever seen that Kit Kat, which is just like, the chocolate-covered wafer, has a lot of very odd flavors that are made especially for the Japanese market, I believe it is. And then what else did they have? They had Lay's potato chips in all sorts of odd flavors, not all of which I could really identify because the bags were all in Japanese. And I took a quick picture while I was there, and I didn't buy anything, but I'm definitely thinking of going back for a very special episode of Ruminate.
Yeah, in relation to the Kit Kats, a colleague of mine bought back, I believe it was lemon Kit Kats. I can't remember where he went on holiday now. I think he was in Spain. Because the UK has Kit Kats, like they're very popular, but we only get, the standard, just chocolate, pretty much. There's a couple of variations, but we don't get any of these weird flavors where it's like fruit or mint, that kind of stuff.
So I just sent you a picture, and one of them is a matcha latte flavor. And I'm looking to see what else is on here. Some of these have English on them too. One is milk tea.
Oh, this is quite the selection that they've got going on.
One is
there.
orange. Yeah, there's an orange one. I'm trying to see what some of these other ones are. This one looks like it might be green tea or mint. And then they have something called a Choco Pie, which has a lot of different flavors of these, what look like cookies covered in chocolate with like a marshmallow center. And they have a green tea flavor there, as well as some other flavors. Like they have something called black sugar.
I've just looking at that. I've never heard of black sugar. I don't know.
No, I haven't either. It's kind of interesting. So what you're looking at here, this little section, is maybe, I don't know, 1/5, not even 20% of the wall of snacks that they had. It's really quite remarkable. And there were a lot of people in there buying them. There were people in there buying more of the snacks than they were the video games.
This is a thing that's happened. A couple of sort of observations. One, in this picture, you can see the Funko Pops that this shop also sells, just higher up on the shelf. Yep, they have a bunch of those. And the pivot that these secondhand game shops and just shops that sell like records and things like that, the pivot to Funko Pops and interesting snacks, I think, has kind of happened like everywhere. Like, I guess it's really the kind of thing that you can sell. You know, you walk in there for a video game and you go, "Oh, I'll try these weird Kit Kats that I've never heard of." You know, and then the Funko Pops are ridiculously popular as well.
Yeah, they are. That's like the wall behind, and it's like a whole wall of Funko Pops. It's a ton of them. They've got 1 million of them there. And I did look. I mean, one of the things that I do is I usually tend to go to these shops and I think, oh, I better look up and see if this is cheaper online. And a lot of times it is. But they actually had some pretty good deals on a couple of different Pokemon games. But they tended to be the higher price games, like, I don't know, what were they, like Sapphire and Ruby and those ones where it was like, oh, online it was $225 and at this shop it was like $175. So it was cheaper for sure, but it was still a very expensive game for a physical game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the prices of Nintendo games, whether it's, you know, for the NES or the Switch, it is the prices, they never go down. They only go one way, which is up.
Right. And the ones right now that are the most expensive really are the DS and 3DS because those things are not really on any kind of like virtual console or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're also harder to emulate. I mean, they're not impossible to emulate by any means, but you have to have decent hardware to emulate those. You know, they're kind of like medium range games. They're not really they're not as simple to deal with as something like a Game Boy where you don't have to have a BIOS file and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but that was my outing and my snack story. The Carolina Reaper, I will tell you that my brother grows these. He had a bunch of them in his garden, and they're so strong that he made strawberry jam with Reaper pepper in them, and you could put just a little tiny bit of the jam on some cheese and a cracker, and that was about all you could handle because it was so hot.
Yeah. Yeah, this is why I was a bit hesitant, you know, but because Kai is a good salesman, he opened a bag, let me try one. You know, the first one's free, that's how they get you.
It is how they get you. Yeah, it gets you hooked on the Carolina Reaper pepper cheese curls. That's very good. Well, that's good. I hope he finds the buffalo wing and blue cheese flavor because that sounds kind of interesting. I'll have to look for these. My local grocery store hasn't had any new chips or anything recently, so that's one reason I haven't brought any new snacks to the show. But I don't know why I didn't walk out of the shop, the video game shop, over the weekend with a pack of something. I suppose because Jennifer was with me, and she probably her response would probably be, "Why did you buy those?" It's
you need them for your work.
Rob. I did it for Rob.
Exactly. You know, we do it for the people.
Yeah, we do. Anyway, so what else we got on the agenda today?
So we are just about halfway through May, which means we're halfway through Weblog posting month. And I've managed
POMO. I thought it was POMO.
Yeah, WeblogPoMo. And I've managed to post every single day so far.
Nice.
You know, there's been I got a bit spicy about companies asking you for ratings.
Yeah. You explained why you have 2 B's in your name, which I thought was very good. I actually didn't know that story myself.
Yeah, I think that's been my most popular one. People were really into that one. And then the next one sort of segues into our into a topic slightly, but Apple yesterday said, "Oh, we're gonna release we're gonna release a list of the 100 best albums." And I mean,
right.
you can already go, "Oh my god!" Like you can't do that. You can't pick 100 best albums. That's never gonna, you're not gonna please anybody. But it bled in nicely to the post I was planning, where I was going to post my top 50 artists based on my Last.fm data.
Okay.
So what I did was switched it slightly and made it my 100 best albums, but not me picking the albums, purely just based on how many plays these albums have had over the past 3 years of my Last.fm data. So my list is definitely not as varied as Apple's.
I'm sure.
I feel like if you have a look through it, the genres that I listen to are very, very limited. But yeah, Apple have this 100 best list, and they're doing, what is it, 10 a day? I think they're releasing. Is
10
that right?
a day. Yeah, 10 a day, and they went out of their way to explain that they're not doing it based on streaming data. It's an editorial decision, and probably anticipating people getting upset. They have spread the love by incorporating the opinions of a bunch of artists, people in the music industry, a bunch of different people, some of whom were named, some of whom were not. They only really named a handful of the artists, some of the more popular people on there. I really forget who the list included. I know Nile Rodgers was on there, who's a producer, and then Charlie XCX was on the list. I forget who else. But in any event, they're doing it 10 a day for 10 days. It's interesting. I mean, I think the webpage is kind of cool. I don't really understand why Apple puts this sort of stuff, like their replay playlists, on the web, but not in Apple Music. I'm not really sure. I have to assume that it's some sort of constraint in Apple Music itself that really prevents them from doing whatever it is they want to do in terms of the presentation or the design. But it feels out of place on the web to me. Other than it's pretty easy to get, hit a button and take you into Apple Music if you want that. But I always find it a little odd that it's on the web. But
I think the worst thing is you click it from the Apple Music app, you hit the website, that's fine, and the first thing you get is a little bubble in the top right that's like sign in, and it's like, come on, Apple, like, there are ways to do that, whether you could sign me in, with a signed URL or something like that. I shouldn't click a link from a thing I'm already signed into, and then you'd be like, oh, you got to sign in now just to see this list.
I know it's a terrible user experience, and I suppose it's probably done in the name of privacy on some level, I guess, maybe, but it seems misguided to me, because you're right. I mean, if someone has gone to the trouble of signing into Apple Music, the app, what's wrong with kind of automatically signing them in on the web? I don't see any problem there. But in any event, that's how it works. And they've gotten through 20 so far. And, I don't know. There's not a lot in the first 20. They've done 80 through 100, and not a lot there that really are favorites of mine. But I think it's well done in the sense that I appreciate that they're doing it in chunks, because 100 at one time would be too much. I also appreciate the editorial narrative, the content that's around it. There's like a discussion of each album as well. So there's obviously a lot of trouble and time has gone into it. The colors of the web pages for the individual albums mirror the color of the albums in the artwork of the albums themselves. A lot of nice little touches that work really well. So yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I joke, they're going to get people arguing or whatever, as you say, I think they've made it pretty clear that it's like this is an editorial list. It's not. They're not picking. They are picking the best albums, but this, as you say, this isn't based on streaming data. Because if it's streaming data, the first 10 are going to be Taylor Swift.
Right, and it also, it would be boring. It would probably be a lot more boring. This at least has some taste involved, which makes it good for both. It makes it more interesting. It creates more of a conversation, whether it's an argument or not. And this is the kind of thing that's been done forever by sites like Rolling Stone and whatever.
Yeah, and I'm looking through the list now, and I think there's definitely a few albums here that I know of but haven't listened to a lot that I'll probably pick out, and see if I like them, and if I don't, it doesn't really matter. It's not the end of the world. But as you say, it's a sort of interesting thing that they're doing, and everyone can just play nice, and we don't have to argue about what's in the list.
Right. And, it's what I think is kind of cool about it is that you may not find a lot of your favorites on there, but I'm sure that for everybody, there will be at least some that they either like, forgot about, or want to explore. And it's an easy way to kind of get into a few albums that you've maybe heard of, but haven't really paid much attention to in the past. So I think that's kind of cool. I have two more topics for you, Rob. One is a very short one, and one's maybe a little more involved. Mm-hmm. I want to first talk about the press release we saw today from Apple about how much fraud they have prevented on the App Store, which, if people pay attention to the rhythm of the newsroom at Apple, that's a pretty typical pre-WWDC story that is published by Apple every year. They're putting the best. They're trying to put the best face on the App Store leading up to their developer conference. But to me, it really struck me today as like, oh, well, here's a sign that people are very into the alternative marketplaces in the EU, because now Apple's trying to spread fear about the fraud that they've prevented, and that, by implication is not going to be prevented by them in EU app stores. And maybe that's a little unfair. Maybe that's an unfair take, an uncharitable take, but I don't know. I mean, I really don't like what I have noticed, which is a much greater trend in recent years for these kind of very self-serving press releases out of the company. I mean, it's PR in the most PR-y sense, and it's like something that we don't, unless there's some really, really interesting news in it, we don't really tend to cover at Mac Stories. And I didn't cover this one because I looked at it and I was like, it just makes me roll my eyes, frankly. When I see it, it's like I appreciate that they prevent fraud, but I just don't like the self-congratulatory pat on the back that they give themselves.
No, and if you look at it, I mean, okay, fine, they've got this $7 billion number, which I feel like is the only milestone they're really clinging on to here. There is no reason for this press release to come out except for exactly what you said, which is, look how good the App Store is. Don't use the alternative marketplaces because you're going to get frauded. It feels like the message to me as well. Like I can't see any other reason why you would put this out.
Right. The next one that will come out, I will tell you, between now and June 10th will be how much money that they've made for third-party developers. That comes out every year about 3 weeks before WWDC too. And, I get it. I mean, it's a public relations. I mean, it is coming from PR, and they're trying to make the best of the relationship with developers. But I don't know. I think that people have this kind of thing has grown thin on people, that that people kind of see through it, and they would prefer actions that speak a little louder than just words about how awesome, because these numbers are they're just numbers. And like when you see the numbers for how much money's been made by the App Store, most of that stuff's not being made by little developers anyway. Most of that's like Candy Crush stuff. That's that's in-app purchases, and it's fine. I mean, but nobody. I mean, the people who read Mac Stories, for instance, they don't care about Tencent. They care about the people who make the cool little apps that they use, and that I know is not really. It's not the priority I think it maybe used to be for Apple. I do wonder about that sometimes. It's like, I know that Apple's never going to make billions on indie developers, but I also feel like what's gotten lost a little bit in the translation over the last several years is how much indie developers actually push the platform forward by doing innovative things, all the way back to times like Tweety, when Lauren Brichter invented pulled refresh. I mean, that's the classic example. That was a long time ago now, but that wasn't a thing that Apple added to iOS. That was a thing that an indie developer created, and it spread. So I don't know. All that kind of stuff then, as a result, sort of rubs me the wrong way, but it's part of the game, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I want to pull out here, they highlight a little bit further down, there's been 248,000 app submissions rejected for spam, copycats, or misleading users. Okay, that's great, but my guess is there's probably nearly that many in the store that are still misleading users.
There is a lot of junk. I mean, I do find it funny when people are like, oh, the App Store is great because it's such a carefully curated thing. And people will say that to me. I'm like, well, have you looked around the App Store? I mean, I was just talking to Federico on App Stories recently about how impossible it is to find a good wallpaper app on the App Store because most of them are like spammy or scammy junk. And there are some good ones, but you can't just type in wallpaper and find anything but nonsense. And you have to really pay attention to know where to find that stuff, which I think is a shame because there are artists who are doing very interesting apps and to distribute their wallpapers. I mean, in the context we were talking about it, is that we would like to see like a wallpaper store built into the settings app or some sort of functionality in iOS that lets people more easily manage and curate wallpapers, and for developers or artists to sell them in a way that doesn't get them lost on the App Store. And that was rumored years ago now. It was like 3, 4, 5 years ago now, and nothing ever came of it. And I'd like to see that actually on the App Store at some point. Yeah,
I can see why people end up with this idea that, oh no, the App Store's great, there's loads of good apps. And that is, from my point of view, like, the apps I know about are ones that are written about on Mac Stories, or people tell me about them on podcasts, or, private Discords and things like that. And every single one of those apps is great, and it's done by an indie developer, and it's not scammy. But as you say, as soon as you go to the actual store and look for stuff, it's not like that at all. You know what
I was looking for this morning? I was looking for the game Braid, the classic platformer Braid. It just came out on Netflix. It's a Netflix game. So if you're a Netflix subscriber, you can download it for free. For no extra cost, I should say. And it's Braid, the Anniversary Edition, which is supposed to be quite good because they've updated the graphics and the soundtrack and some other things. And I thought I would check it out and play it. And if you type just Braid into the App Store, good luck finding the classic game. You'll find a lot of stuff about braiding people's hair, which is fine, but even typing, I think once I put in Anniversary Edition, I found it, but it's just really hard with the way the App Store works, trying to find things sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like we could talk about the App Store all day, but let's not.
No, let's not. You know what we should talk about? We should get Spicy John back on the show to talk about AI.
Yeah. No, I know we have to. I know.
We have to. Because the big talk is that's going to be a big thing in iOS 18. And I've been thinking about it quite a bit because I'm not a fan of a lot of the implementations of AI. It's not that I'm not a fan of AI. I think that it is a technology. I mean, there's a place for it in the world of technology. I'm just not a big fan of things of like what the browser company's doing and disintermediating actual websites and the fact that these AI companies are scraping the internet and taking people's creative work and turning them into something that they're not compensated for. And that all bothers me. And I wonder how Apple is going to deal with all of that. And a big part of that came up in my mind with this Crush video that came out alongside the iPad event last week, which I talked to Federico about on Mac Stories Unwind last week, and I listened to him talk to Jason and Stephen Hackett talk about it on Upgrade this week. And I think Jason made a very good point, which is like it's the canary in the coal mine for Apple about the sentiment that's out there about AI and the anxiety that I think a lot of people who are very traditional Apple customers, creative type people, have when it comes to AI and what the reaction could be if it's not handled properly with iOS or whatever other operating systems they bake it into. And that's just got me thinking about it a lot and how they might actually implement it. And I'm not, obviously it remains to be seen what's going on. I do hope though that what they do is, I think there's an opportunity for Apple that's super unique with AI that, OpenAI, for instance, doesn't really have a choice but to use freely available content to both train their model and create content using their model. And that's using the internet, scraping the internet, and using a chatbot to give you answers about topics. Whereas Apple has information that's much more personal to you. You know, your calendar, your text messages, the websites you visit, all sorts of things. And that's both a little scary, but it's also a very good opportunity if it's done in a very privacy-oriented way where you could take all that information and maybe at the end of the day I say, hey, you know, whoever, my assistant, my voice assistant, or just a feature in an app and say, hey, give me a summary of everything I did today. You know, give me an idea of what are the links I saved in various apps? What are the TV shows that I marked as things I want to look at, I want to watch later? What are the photos I took? A little bit like what you get in Journal with the prompts where, you know, the Journal app will say, you know, here's some music you listened to, some podcasts, and some exercise you did, some photos you took, and use those as prompts for like a journal entry. Use that kind of pulling that kind of information together in one place as a way of giving you something more valuable than having to go and find all that stuff in a bunch of different apps, centralize it, and make it, put it in the control of the user though. Don't just do it necessarily for them, but let the users create those kind of summaries. And I think it could be interesting.
Yeah, I think you're right. I want to be hopeful that the Apple I like to think that they are is going to approach AI in the same way, as you say. It's, you know, ideally on device, it's private,
right,
and it's genuinely useful because I think, you know, I don't think anyone can argue like the you know, the text selection that you can do from images that's been on iOS now for a couple of years or something. That's incredible. The fact that it can identify, you know, plants and, you know, what type of dog is this, and you do a little swipe up in photos and it will give you information about what you're looking at. Like, those kind of things are genuinely useful to people. I'm looking at a photo. Yep. I would like to know what it is. You can pull out the subject, all that kind of stuff. My concern is the stockholders, the investors, because they want endless growth.
Right.
And what does endless growth look like in the year of our Lord 2024? It's put AI in everything. It feels like every other day there's like a new company that's saying, oh, we've got this AI chat thing that does something. You know, it's vague. You don't really know what it does, but like,
right,
all they care about is that they can say to their investors, look, we've put AI in our thing, and they'll give them more money, and then the company gets bigger.
Right. And I think that's a valid concern, because that's what I share is the concern that out of a certain desperation, Apple compromises some of its company values. And I also hesitate because I'm not so sure the company values are as pure as maybe they once were, or that we think that they are. And it's always, I think it's always hard to kind of to try to ascribe motive and morals to a company as opposed to individuals. And, I certainly have met a lot of people who work at Apple over the years, and I think there are a lot of good people there. And so I have a lot of, I would say in general, I have a lot of confidence in them as a company, and I try not to like paint with too broad a brush, but I do think we're in a time in the tech industry where there is a lot of pressure to implement AI in some way in order to show investors that companies are growing or have some sort of strategy in order to, maximize value for their shareholders. And Apple's no different than any other company that way. And so they're under the same pressures, and who knows where that leads.
Yeah, and I feel like the other thing that I can't stop thinking about is, there's been these reports that they've partnered with OpenAI or potentially
right.
Google. And then I see a report, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that like one query on OpenAI is using like half a liter of water, just for cooling the servers and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
That part aside, like Apple just took the stickers out of their boxes for their products.
Yeah.
Because they want to be plastic free in their products, which is totally, that's a really good thing to do. I totally agree. It's unnecessary to be shipping plastic if we don't have to. But if they're then going to partner with OpenAI, and you've got however many is a billion iOS devices that are going to suddenly be using that service, whatever that looks like, I feel like it's hard to equate those two things when on the one hand Apple is saying, oh no, we're trying to be really carbon neutral and all of these things, and on the other hand we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, there's a tension there for sure. I mean, it's one of those things where, and that's, I mean, one of the things that I think the company should be applauded for is trying to become carbon neutral, and not just themselves, but also to spread that through their entire, supply chain. And that would include then something like OpenAI or Google. And I don't really know what either of those companies are doing, but you would hope that however Apple ends up doing this, whether it's through their own servers or through somebody else's, that they're trying to do it in a sustainable way. Not sure how that plays out in the end. I mean, it sounds like there's going to be at least the expectation there's going to be some sort of combination where there are some things that are being done on device, some things being done on Apple servers, and some things opened up to third parties, which may be just like, here's a chatbot, choose your chatbot service that you want to use. And it'll be a little bit like when Apple Maps was powered by Google Maps.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, that could be what we're looking at here over the next, say, 5 years, is they start with what's rumoured this year where they've partnered with all these companies, and then, in 4 or 5 years they go, oh, now we've got, Siri AI or whatever they want to call it.
Right.
And it's their own thing, and it's completely unrelated to these partners that they've got. And I think in terms of what you said, in terms of like what we're expecting to see, I think you're right. I think something like what the Journal does could be interesting. I assume, they're already kind of using this for autocorrect and things like that. If there was some sort of, I could see, can you highlight some other issues, a bit like Grammarly does, in this piece of text, that kind of thing. I really hope they don't do, just general text generation of, garbage content and image generation, that kind of thing, because all of that is just kind of rubbish, to be honest. Like, stop that, all of you.
I agree. I think that's why they're looking for a third party to partner with, because I think that's where the pressure to do AI is coming from. Is like not everybody, but a lot of people equate chatbots with AI and nothing else. Apple's already doing AI and machine learning in other areas, and I hope that they expand that. The thing that I am least interested in is generative text from a chatbot, or just even I'm not even that interested in having a voice chat with a chatbot personally. I just find that to be inefficient and slow. I want answers, and I want them quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. This isn't. I feel like there is this subset of people who are either they have a vested interest in AI, be that probably money, or they work for one of these companies in some way. Or there's people that I've seen it described like there are people who are thinking, I'm not good at X thing, whether that's writing blog posts or writing novels, or I'm not very good at drawing, and they think that this generative stuff is just going to get them to the point where they don't need to do that anymore, and they can just, ask AI to. I mean, it's already a problem on Amazon. There's thousands and thousands of AI generated novels being submitted every day at this point, and I don't even know how you stop that. I really hope Apple avoid this generated sort of angle of AI, because I just don't think that's that useful or important, quite frankly.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like to me, that's the passing fad. To me, that's the fad of AI. That AI as a technology is important and will be around for the long haul, and that we will find useful things to do with it, but that chatbots and that chatbots won't go away, but chatbots we're seeing, 1% of the productivity and usefulness of AI embodied in a chatbot. It just happens to be a UI model that a lot of people can relate to, and it's easy to use. So that's why it has kind of captured the imagination of the broader public, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we don't have long to wait now. I mean, was about a month away? Is that right?
Yeah, we got about a month to go before WWDC. I've already got my ticket in my hotel, so I should be there. I hope. I haven't, we haven't seen any press invites go out yet, but I just said invite, Rob. I shouldn't say that. Invitation. People shouldn't say invite.
Wait, what's wrong with invite?
Invite is not a word. Invitation is a word. Invite is a verb. It's not a noun.
It is in the UK.
Oh, all right. Well,
we definitely use it like that.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe there is a use case that I am not familiar with that I can feel better about having you just use that word.
I feel like that's why I had to ask you, because it didn't sound weird to me at all. It sounded completely fine to my ears.
Well, I know. I think it's very normal. It's very normal for people to use. I just like to. It's one of those things. The editor in me is editing myself as I speak, which is a real problem. I do that all the time. I think about what I'm saying, and I go back. I'm like, oh, I would have changed this word and that word, and
yeah, I try not to think about that when I'm editing the show. But
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, good conversation. I guess we will be back in a couple of weeks.
We absolutely will. So have a good time. Speak to you soon.
All right. See ya.